Hi everyone, my name is Anita Glover and I'm the Mental Health Ambassador for the Engage Africa Foundation. The foundation was started a few years back and our focus so far has been on non-communicable diseases, but we haven't really had much information out there about mental health. What we're trying to do now is to create a video series that focuses specifically on mental health. We want to have open, honest dialogue about the myths, stigmas, and just talk about mental health, what it means to people, and just raise awareness about issues that have to do with mental health. We're going to start the video series by just going out there and asking people what their definition of mental health is. Please watch. So, what is your definition of mental health?
It's skewed for me. I had dealt with people with mental health disabilities. For instance, I have a best friend whose sister has Down syndrome, and I used to watch her and take her to her classes, and take her to her, doctor's appointments, and I lived with them for a while as well. So, being her caretaker for a small portion of time, I see the struggle that her family and her that goes through on a daily basis. We would be going, swimming, for instance, and you can try to see her wanting to know why her body is, floating in water versus just sinking, because she was very terrified of that. So for me, it's kind of seeing somebody try to piece two to two together in a slower span and not understanding it to the fullest potential that they could, possibly get. For me, it's just kind of putting two to two together is the definition of it for me, getting them to get their body and their brain connecting as one.
I think mental health is a very complex thing to try to define in 45 seconds, but I guess that also helps you to be succinct. I think mental health is really what's going on inside, really. So it's looking at your psychological, social, spiritual, emotional health. And in a few words, it's really how do you respond to life. I think when you're mentally healthy, you respond to life, not just react. And I was asking my sister what she thought, and she said it's basically, do you control your brain or does your brain control you? So I think at the end of the day, mental health is really, what's going on and how does it translate to the way that you respond to life, circumstances, social interactions, stresses, and your relationships.
I think mental health refers to a person's psychological, emotional, and even spiritual state of being. I think mental health kind of dictates how a person sees the world, how a person interacts with the world, how a person engages with their surroundings, and kind of, how a person lives their lives, essentially. It's obviously a very important aspect of us as people, and it's something that has to be obviously paid attention to, because it kind of sways how our life goes and how we kind of navigate our lives, and how we kind of navigate the world.
Initially, I viewed mental health as the ability of an individual to think, reason, and communicate appropriately with his or her environment and everybody. In other words, whoever is unable to communicate appropriately or interact appropriately with his environment or the people in his or her environment, I consider that person to have mental health issues. However, currently, I think mental health is the ability of an individual to maintain cognitive balance while working through the physical, spiritual, social, and the emotional aspect.
Mental health includes psychological, emotional, and social well-being. Mental health can affect how we think, how we feel, and even how we cope with issues of everyday life. Mental health can be positive or negative. Positive in the sense that when we are able to handle or cope with issues of everyday life, it shows a good indicator of a positive mental health. Negatively is when there's an imbalance in our psychological well-being, which can be evident in disorders like anxiety, depression, and even heart-related diseases like hypertension. Mental health is just like any other disease. It's as important as physical well-being. I believe that when we are able to deal with issues of everyday life positively, we are able to eat healthily, when we're able to exercise, when we're able to express our feelings properly, we can improve upon our mental health.
When I think about mental health, I think about the deformities in the brain, how your brain functions. It doesn't function as a normal person's brain, but at times it takes you a slower time to do something or to think fast. So that's what I think when I'm,
So when I think about mental health, I think about eating healthy, getting regularly checked from the doctor's office, making sure that I exercise at least 2 or 3 times a week to me being fit, being consistent in terms of my diet, right? So those kind of stuff I think about when it comes to mental health.
Okay, so when I think of mental health, the first thing that comes to my mind is someone who has a different brain development and thinks differently. When I think about mental health, I think about how the brain works and like how it performs its functions. Yeah. Also, well, I feel like everybody has a brain, but theirs works differently in some way. And also, mental health is like, for example, you say someone is mental health.
When I think of mental health, I think of schizophrenia, I think of eating disorders, I think of depression, I think of anxiety, basically.
mental health, when I think of mental health, I think about insane. That's the first word that comes to mind. I feel like mentally disabled people don't function normally as opposed to how other people, they don't do things like a normal people would do. I feel like they need extra attention compared to normal people. So that's pretty much what I
hear about mental health. What comes in mind is psychological well-being of an individual. So it ranges how well a person is, or how, I don't know. It's not necessarily insanity, because mental health is a whole thing, and I believe it ranges, or it is measured on a quantum. So depending on how well the person is or how good the person's mental health is, then you could infer or refer to insanity, or how well the person's cognition and thinking capabilities is. So depending on all those factors, I think they all contribute to one's mental health.
When we speak of mental health, we're actually talking about the state of mind of a person. So mental health, mind health. It's a psychological state of a person. It's practically the most important form of health that anybody could have. It affects every facet of a person's psyche. Your mental health affects your physiological state, it affects your emotional state, it affects even your social state. And so it's a state of health that needs to be kept in check, and it needs to be nurtured and always kept in proper form, because it will affect every part of a person's being.
It's funny, when I think about mental health, the first thing that comes to mind is mental. And this is something that we used to in Ghana, where the teacher would come to class. Usually it would be a math teacher, and he or she would quiz the class, give the class a math quiz. And what mental is that it's pretty much an indicator of how fast or how quick you can think as a person. So relating this to mental, from my little definition, is how does a person react to things? Things meaning what their reaction could be contrary to what society may perceive as a standard norm. So does this mean the person can function? Absolutely not. What I believe is that they may need aided help, such as medication, therapy, or even time to be able to process, so they can react, So I think the only difference with mental health and other conditions or illnesses is that mental health is visible, meaning you're able to see how the person is reacting versus somebody who has diabetes or somebody who has hypertension. You're not able to tell just by seeing them or by communicating with them unless they tell you, versus somebody who has mental health where just by communicating with them, it may show in their conversation, it may even show physically. So this is my little definition of mental health, and I hope it helps.
So mental health. Mental health has a lot to do with obviously the condition of your mind, but mental health comes also from, to me, environment. Environment has a lot to do with it, and how it kind of shapes you and then changes you. Obviously, everything that is mental kind of change your emotions and feelings on the inside, and then also affects your decisions, your daily decisions, and if you're willing to take risk or not. When someone is mentally sound, obviously they get to make decisions that are, I would say, wiser, but at the same time there's less fear. So that's how I would say mental health is to me. So environment has a lot to do with it, much more than anything. Where you're raised at home and in the house and all that. So yeah,
I feel it's important that people know what it is, because it's the most important state of anyone's being. Because I mean, it really affects everything about you. It's the, you know, it's your psychological, physical, and social well-being, right? That pretty much affects how you think, how you act, how you handle stress, how you handle life. So it's pretty it's an important state of mind, and it's really, really serious. So how you handle, how you deal with your mental stress, how you take care of your mental health pretty much affects everything.
So I was asked, what do I think is mental health? And to be honest, I haven't really thought about that, so I'm not too sure, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. I think it's really asking the question, who are you in your mind while being in your body? Not sure if that makes sense, but think about it. So how would I put that in words? I think mental health is an arbitrary visual depiction of a state of mind, a person's state of mind, and it forces us to define what is normal, and that's kind of a little tricky because normal can be different for different people, and that's, I think, is both amazing and scary. And what really to link it all back is that in mental health, a happy mind is a healthy mind, and that is really discovering a way to be in tune and accept who you are.
So the definition of mental health, well, I'm not pretty sure what actually it defined, but my understanding is that anything apart from our physical health, like which involves our psychological or mental health issues, like our cognitive, thinking, or mainly our mental and psychological status. That means the part of the health which involves our psychological condition and mental health condition. So that's I think should include under the mental health.
Well, you heard it all. I was actually thinking about the question that was asked. What is your definition of mental health? And I realized that it's actually a very, very, very interesting and complicated, difficult question to answer. If you weren't a part of the opinion poll, I'd ask that you take a few minutes to just think about the question and try to answer for yourself, and maybe try to figure out what mental health really means to you. Watch out for the next sets of videos that are going to be posted. We're going to have a panel that's going to sit and discuss what they think about mental health, and then we're going to focus specifically on depression, what it is, how it presents, and possibly talk about strategies to try to prevent or stop it, and to be able to recognize it in our friends, our families, and our loved ones.